Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so this is the sales enablement call where the topic of security, and it's sort of an ask me anything approach, but I do want to make sure that we cover the software composition analysis wave that Forrester recently published and make sure everybody's seen that and that you know how to interpret the results and where to go for more information on that. So I thought maybe we'd start for a minute, start there, and then see what questions come up. So that's all right. And Philippe graciously agreed, since I'm on the road, to have that that web page available. So the wave came out a few weeks back, and we have a blog article and a web page. The blog article points to the web page. We didn't purchase the distribution rights to the wave because it's not stellar. It's great for where we are, but there's other 451 actually has something that I think positions us a little bit better, and so we're looking at buying the rights for that one, the reprint on that one instead. But where we came out, they don't allow us, since we were not buying the reprint rights, they don't allow us to do the graphic of the wave itself on here. But Philippe, do you have the report itself with the graphic that we can just show people even though we can't post it anywhere?
I don't have the report with me. I'm still looking in the Slack.
Oh, looking for it. Okay. All right.
It will be there in a minute.
Okay, perfect. So the where we are is a challenger, and they scored us low for execution in terms of product that we have there today, which I would expect. We haven't been around for very long with security capabilities, and in fact we didn't qualify for the Gartner Magic Quadrant because we hadn't had revenue from security long enough. So the fact that we're on there at all is really a testimony to, we have a product that's considered among the 10 that Forrester was looking at. I think that's a testimony to the team creating a product that is viable in a very, very short time.
Cindy, I can show you the wave. I've got it from a competitor.
Perfect, thank you.
While John's bringing that up, Cindy, could you explain to everyone on the call, this is the SCA Wave, which is the software composition analysis, and how that differs from just general application security? Because there's very specific things they were looking for, right?
That's true, very good point. So software composition analysis includes static code analysis and dependency analysis and license management. It does not include dynamic scanning because it's really intended to be what the developer would, or not necessarily what the developer would use, but what's used very early in the software development lifecycle before testing. And so this is before software testing.
You cut out there, I think, maybe just for me, but.
Okay, I'm sorry. So were you able to catch that, or do I need to repeat that? I'm sorry.
I got it, Cindy. I think it might have just been for Dan.
It might have been on my end. Not the first time, sorry.
Okay. If you can go back to the wave picture there, perfect. So you see we're rather low in terms of execution of our current offering, what we have today. Again, I would expect that. I had hoped that we'd be a little bit further on the strategy side, but they dinged us for two areas, which you could argue about, and we did considerably. One is they said that our ability to execute against the roadmap was, they gave us a 1 out of 5 for that, which my argument was we published the roadmap, we release once a month. We've met our once a month commitment for 90 times in a row. Show me any other vendor that's done that, but they refused to budge on that. And the other area was the ability to integrate into the SDLC, which, on first blush, you go, what are they smoking? What are they, how are they interpreting that we don't integrate into the SDLC? Because that's like our main thing of what we do. But I think where they're coming from is we don't make it super easy to integrate with other tools in the development chain because of our strategy of being a single application for the entire software development lifecycle. So they were kind of taking issue with our strategy in that regard. And that's where 451 is better, because they see that as an important element of our strategy, and they actually give us kudos for that, whereas Forrester kind of holds it against us. So anyway, a couple points there that you can make to push back and with anybody that questions where we are on the strategy side of that. But the key takeaways really are, we have a great product that has been developed in a very short time that put us on the map, in record time. We're on the map. So that's super important. And then our track record of continuously improving and iterating. The version that they evaluated was 11.6. So in that web page, I came back and showed all of the improvements that have been made just since 11.6 that address some of the concerns that they brought up. So, if they were to evaluate it today, they'd probably put it a little further out because we met some of those issues. So anyway, let me take a pause there and see if anybody has any questions.
And just so you know, while you were talking, I downloaded the report, I put it into a shared drive, and the link is in chat.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yep. And we can thank WhiteSource for giving us the report.
Well, and you know what? We should put that in the issue, in the AR issue, so that there's one place to go for everything. That'd be great. And if you want to pop over to the web page, make sure everybody's aware of what's there. That would be awesome.
Hey, Cindy, question on when Forrester said, our lack of integrations with other products in the SDLC. I'm curious what our approach is there. Are we going to be, opening that up, or is our approach just closed off to GitLab functionality? What's our strategy?
You can integrate other tools into the pipeline. It's just not real elegant right now.
Right.
And I think that, in talking with Kenny a bit, who's the PM at the moment, I think he agrees that we'll be more likely to integrate SAST and DAST from other vendors because those are well-established markets. It doesn't really make sense for us to try to build or buy something there. In the container space, we will, I would expect that we will, do more there ourselves. Mm-hmm. Because it's less established and there's opportunities to do some things with taking advantage of our single application from end to end and doing some things that others can't. So it'll be a mixture, but I would expect that we will work on improving that.
Okay. And I have just, I guess, a general question then. In the network and endpoint security space, strategy is very much, defense in depth, adding layers of security products. Do you see the same in AppSec, or is it generally, customer A is choosing WhiteSource and that's it, or they just have Synopsys and that's it? or is there?
No, there's multiple players. So generally, a lot of these vendors don't do the entire breadth. So they don't do, static dynamic, which is not considered in the SCA Wave, but they don't do static dynamic dependency, container and license management. And so generally it's been sort of a best of breed approach. And, people would buy, maybe Veracode historically for SAS and DAS. They might buy, Sonatype for dependency scanning, and something else for Sneak is becoming more popular. I want to make sure that y'all realize that of all of these players on here, they're the ones that I think have kind of grown the fastest most recently. And they're a niche player, so they're not going to cover all the bases, and so people are still going to have to stitch together a tool chain even in security.
Got it, thanks. So that could speak, if that's the case, that could speak to add more support to adding integration capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, it still goes back to the breadth over depth of scanning. With GitLab, because we are we're integrated into the pipeline and we're sort of a byproduct of checking in your code, you can scan every single code change. Whereas if you're using these other tools, you're probably, some of the ones that are more expensive, like Veracode and Synopsys, you're probably going to use more judiciously because it's expensive. You can't afford to do scan every piece of code. And if you've built in into your scanning into your pipeline like Sneak, it's not checking for everything. So, we represent a really good balance where you can scan every single code change for a larger variety of types of scans than anybody else. And so, back to the simplicity message, which gets me into the other piece that I wanted to mention. There's kind of two sets of customers we've talked about in the past. There's the more SMB market that, doesn't even necessarily go by size, but those that haven't invested in application security and those that have. And those that have tend to be the ones that also have invested heavily in DevOps. They tend to be regulated industries like financial services and so forth. And they've already made big investments in some of these others, Veracode, Synopsys, what have you. And so, which, by the way, Synopsys owns Black Duck, so Black Duck falls under Synopsys, just FYI. It's not realistic to expect them to rip and replace. And so the message with those that have already made those investments should be more of the defense in depth. Let's, have multiple scanning, and you can cut your costs perhaps with these other more expensive scanners by arming the developers to scan every code commit, and then, catching the deeper scans less frequently. Versus the customers who haven't made any investment in application security, or maybe minimal, in which case we've had a lot of luck where they, really appreciate having this breadth of scanning all in one place. And it helps them with their compliance because they need to be able to show that they're scanning their code and, looking for vulnerabilities and that sort of thing. And this makes it easy to do that. And they're less likely to argue about, the scanners themselves in terms of, we don't have our own threat researchers and that sort of thing. So a little less sophisticated than some of the more expensive ones. Any other questions?
Hey,
Cindy, I've got a question.
Oh, go ahead. I just have a quick question. There are 10 companies on the on that diagram. How many other companies are in existence that do SCA that aren't on the diagram, so that didn't even make the cut, basically?
Well, so software composition analysis really covers a lot of the pretty well established areas. So static analysis has been around for 15 years, so that market's already consolidated. There's not any little players out there really that are doing static analysis that aren't covered by these. Dependency scanning is a little bit newer. I do think though that this picked up the bulk of the dependency scanners. I mentioned that Sneak is the one that to keep an eye on. They seem to be growing. Black Duck, White Source, those are already really well-established players. The one area that has the most growth and opportunity for change is container scanning. And they didn't include like StackRox, TwistLock, Aqua. They didn't include those. I don't know, Philippe, do you have any comments on that? I don't know why they didn't. Yeah, I do know why. Actually, I do know why. Because they're very much point products for container scanning. And I remember in the criteria to qualify for this, you had to have like 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 4 capabilities, and they don't have that breadth. So I just answered my own question there. Sorry about that.
Cindy, quick question here. So I've run into a couple of trials with the security scans, and it's coming down to the fact that we don't support all the languages that they need.
Yeah.
What is I'm just curious as to the process. I know we have on our roadmap to get the big languages down, right, that we can support. But what is the process? So if someone has some obscure language that they have a lot of legacy in, like Cobalt or something like that, like we obviously create a request, but what is the process on the back end? Maybe Philippe can ask this. I'm just curious, do you have to find a tool out there that scans, or do you have to build one? Or how do you add these languages? Because it seems like that'll help us win a lot more if we can. They just want support for all their languages. Sometimes they have 20 languages, right? So I just want to understand kind of the roadmap for how we add support for languages across all the scanning elements.
I will answer that, Cindy, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
All right. So we're a bit off topic here. When I hear language support, I think you are mentioning SAST, whereas we are talking about software composition analysis, which is a different roadmap in GitLab. It's also a different group. We're creating a dedicated team for that. That will be in place next week or something like that. So I'm mentioning that because the process is different when it comes to SAST versus dependency scanning. For SAST, we are using analyzers that are available out there, open source. So we need a tool to exist to be able to wrap it and to integrate that in SAST. For dependency scanning, we are relying on Gymnasium that was acquired last year. And the approach is a bit different. From Gymnasium, we are doing everything in-house because we want to control the full workflow, and it's going to allow us to have some more powerful features in the future. But to support new languages, that means we need to be able to identify new sources of vulnerabilities. So, for example, if you don't have any source out there where we can find vulnerabilities for Cobalt, there's no way we can support that. We don't have a threat researchers team. This is something that we plan to have during this year, but it's not there yet. I don't have any schedule for that. Maybe Q2, maybe Q3. We are working closely with Katie from security to evaluate this setup, and we can put this team in place. But even if we create that team, it's not going to be 20 people right away. So there's no way we can support so many languages at once. We will probably focus in priority on the top languages like Java, C#, C, C++, and maybe Python, that kind of things. But we will add more languages as we grow.
Okay, perfect. So when we have a client that's looking at us for dependency scanning and they've got 10 languages that we don't support, what would be, but like their top languages we do, what would be a response? Could they use us and then maybe on the back end use another provider to scan the rest? Or how would you reply to that sort of situation?
Yes. So to echo what Cindy was saying earlier, the approach that we have here is not to replace everything. We come up with a single application that is a turnkey solution. So we want to be able to provide something that is working to our customers, even if it's not the best breed in class. So it's a kind of a PC approach. When you buy a PC from Dell or HP, it's not the Rockstar PC if you want to do gaming on it. It doesn't have the most powerful video card out there. It has a very decent one that would do the job, but if you want to do gaming, you would buy another graphic card. If you are a DJ, you will probably buy another sound card. But at least with the standard version that we're providing, you can do most of the features that you want with this PC. So we have a kind of the small approach. We're not fighting in front of these companies. There's no way we can compete, and that's also to answer Aiden's question in the chat. We can compete with companies that have been out there for 15 or 20 years. They are, if you take, for example, Synopsys, they have maybe 700 or 800 employees now. They are a lot bigger than the World GitLab company itself. And they are just doing, software composition analysis and static code analysis. So obviously they have better offers than what we have, but they are not able to cover all the projects, all the commits, all the single line of code in these projects. So this is where we are better. And to get back to your answer, Philip, the best way, if we don't support all these languages, we can work with them and identify if it makes sense from a product point of view to put more efforts on the languages that they want to have in the product. The roadmap is never frozen. We freeze the roadmap for the next 3 iterations. After that, it's the direction, and after that, we have the vision. That's the goal of having iterations and delivering every month. We can adapt that. We can move the roadmap. We can target something different if it really makes sense for some customers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to point out, I was in chat, there are a couple questions going back to kind of what is software composition analysis composed of, and so I just want to reiterate, it's static analysis, dependency scanning, container scanning, and license management. It also actually includes code quality, but Forrester didn't really dig into any code quality questions in their wave for some reason. But and to John's point, incorporating third-party security reports into GitLab, as I mentioned, I think we will start making it a little bit easier to include some of the other scanner results, but it would be the vulnerabilities that they find that would show up in the pipeline report, not necessarily the reports themselves. You got to remember that, our secret sauce is our workflow, getting this stuff in the hands of the developers sooner, showing them the vulnerabilities and surfacing them before they've let go of their code and pushed it out to the branch where it's intermingled with everyone else's. So it's all about cause and effect. I did this change to my code and I can see the results. And so having it in that pipeline report is really the secret sauce that we'd want to keep. Philippe, do you want to verbalize that or no?
Absolutely. There are 2 things that I would like to mention. So first of all, integrating third-party vendors like Checkmarks or White Source, it's really required by some customers. I don't remember having discussing with any customer that's not asking for that. So that's the first part. I'm trying to set that as part of my OKRs. So we will start in this quarter to do this initiative. I still need to validate that with the product, so that's why I don't want to commit on this right now. Second thing is regarding the reports in GitLab. We also have some requirements from customers to have better reports. What we have right now in the dashboard is mostly a dashboard. It's something where you can action it, the vulnerabilities. You can target milestone. That's the goal. Having a single place where the security team will be able to take actions from there. But we have some customers asking for more reporting pages, so pages that they would be able to share with the CISO, the director of security, or even with the execs directly, where they can have the trends, where they can have that kind of things, but not the full list of vulnerabilities. So this is something that we will work on during this year, splitting the current dashboard that we have into one dashboard on one side to take actions and one reporting tool on the other side to be able to generate reports that they will be also able to download. To share that later.
Okay, any other questions? What would be a good cadence to talk about security in the enablement sessions?
Every week.
Every week? Well, I know
Once a
there's
month,
lots
something
of
like
other
that.
topics, but
About out after each of the releases to talk about what we've added. What
Yeah.
on.
really, okay.
That's a good point.
So more frequently than we do.
Yes.
I would agree. I think we have a lot of customers asking for things that are on the roadmap, and I think adding those updates more frequently will help us, as those things become released, be more on the ball with it.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. We'll look at
And
that.
just with the goals of the sales team, we need to sell Ultimate, and security is Ultimate for us. So it's important.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we've got 2 minutes left. Any other questions?
I've got a question. This might be longer than 2 minutes though, but I'd like to understand what, we're bringing in for, sans the dependency scanning, we are bringing in open source feeds. Are we having, is there, and the value is to shift everything left, right? But I hear from security people, and when they say, the open source feeds, they're open source. They could be available to anybody. If somebody is sophisticated enough, they could even do it without Ultimate. And what are our plans for, if we have any, to do some sort of proprietary offering?
Well, I don't know that we can address that in the minute that's left, but I can tell you from a sales point, what I would push back on them with is they're absolutely right. It's open source scanners. They could build it themselves. If you want a pound of hamburger, you could go butcher a cow too. But do you really want to do all that effort yourself? I mean, sorry, I'm a former rancher. That's the analogy that came to mind.
It's a good analogy, yeah.
But do you really want to do all that yourself? And yeah, Gymnasium is proprietary, but I would see, as I mentioned, we'll probably be more proprietary on the container side since it's newer, and do more partnerships for the others. But that's a Cindy Blake conjecture at the moment.
Yeah, that's generally what I'm just getting. That's the pushback that I get generally. Nobody wants to build it themselves, but to say, the difference between premium and ultimate, that's kind of where they need to, figure out, is it worth it to bring in these open source feeds, and is that value worth it from a cost perspective? But yeah, Philippe, I know Gymnasium is proprietary. So yeah, it's a longer discussion though.
Yeah, I will get on the calendar for more frequently, though, to talk about security, and we can cover some more of these topics too.
Well, and I think the other thing, Cindy, is to focus on the roadmap, right? Because we're selling the roadmap, we're selling the future, and I think when we talk about where we're going, highlighting the future roadmap items should be something we should focus more heavily on.
Yep.
I really need to drop. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.